بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمد وآله. It's Ramadan, 1445. Today is day 4, Jumu'ah Mubarak. The 3 Quranic addresses apply to each of the 5 facial faculties. In this lesson, we discuss the eyes, the faculty of vision. Through the Tarbawi tafsir, we achieve the perfection of each faculty until the Muhammadan face is complete, a full moon of meanings. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. What does this practically mean? It means that we can read the Quran through the ego, in which we will derive nothing but an affirmation of its falsehood. This is the ego recitation. Or we can read the Quran through the mind, in which we will only derive reflections from our own consciousness. This is the mind's recitation. Or we can read the Quran through the heart, in which we will derive a directive towards devotion, a program of worship that leads to God's pleasure. This is the heart's recitation, and it is the beginning of the internal recitation we described in the Orbit of Mary lesson. Or we can read the Quran through the soul, in which we will derive a direct download of meanings. This is the soul's recitation, and it can only be achieved through the completeness of purpose and wholeness of objective, through the face. This is the Tarbawi tafsir. الوجه جزء كناية عن الكل. In Arabic, the face is a part that is indicative of the whole. For example, in Salah, you can turn your body slightly away from the Qibla when needed, and the prayer remains valid. But the moment you turn your face away, the prayer is nullified. The Ummah is in great turmoil. If we cannot rectify ourselves, how can we step up to the responsibility of helping our Ummah? If we cannot rectify our own families, how can we direct attention to the wider fraternity of faith? If we lament the subjugation of the forces of dunya, while we give it the upper hand ourselves and in our communities, by what divine function do we expect victory? No, the mountains of this ummah are those men and women who rectified themselves, rectified their families, and who turned their whole face to God, and thus derived from His light. The Adamic reality began with blindness. Adam and Eve could not see themselves. It was sin that caused the opening of the door of satanic influence. In fact, Satan was the first influencer in history. God says in Surah Al-A'raf, verse 21, وَقَاسَمَهُمَا إِنِّي لَكُمَا لَمِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. And He swore to them, I am giving you sincere advice. We learn from this that the Adamic address, which represents the fitrah of the human being, is a pendulum that can swing from the satanic to the angelic, and in between, at that state of rest and equilibrium, is the prophetic fitrah. Sayyiduna Adam was not aware, but Sayyiduna Yusuf acknowledged his lower self, and that is why Satan could not trick him. God says through the Adamic address, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. I do not pretend to be blameless, for man's very soul incites him to evil, unless my Lord shows mercy. He is most forgiving, most merciful. So, we learn that the first sign of divine enabling grace is to look at oneself. This is the Adamic address through the vision faculty. The Yusufi reality is in juxtaposition to the satanic reality, in which Iblis turns his face toward whom? Toward another, by comparing himself to the human being, instead of looking at himself to ask, am I obeying the command of God? And so for this reason, for the reason that he turned his gaze away from himself, God turned his gaze away from him, and he became ash-shaytan ar-rajim, the rejected Satan. And this is why we begin the recitation of Quran with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge in God from the accursed Satan. The Adamic address is telling us that if we can't face ourselves, we won't be able to find the prophetic face in ourselves. So, this is the beginning. To be a human being, The Quran says, admit who you are. Don't turn your face toward others to know who you are. That is what Satan did. He could not even conceptualize himself outside the context of competition with man. That is dunya, in unrelenting competition. No matter how many religious social media posts we like or share, our spiritual profile will not change until and unless we look at ourselves in the Quranic mirror. And the only suhbah, the only companionship that can truly help us is that of those who have turned their faces toward God. Today is the first Friday of Ramadan. In Surah Al-Kahf, we recite, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ تُرِيدُ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Keep yourself patient by being with those who call upon their Lord in the morning and the evening, seeking His face, and let not your eyes pass beyond them, desiring adornments of the worldly life. Verse 28. The congregational prayer is the ultimate symbol of suhbah, because through it we stand side by side, but with our faces toward the divine. This is among the secrets of Surah Al-Kahf, which is recited on Friday, the day of the obligatory Jumu'ah prayer. The Quran descended upon the prophetic heart in a cave of seclusion, in the silence of nature, in the glory of contemplation, in the flow of tears, in the humility of hope, in the purity of love. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Read in the name of your Lord, the Creator. The names of Allah are also understood through the levels of Quranic address. The name Al-Khaliq is representative of the Adamic. Thus, when reaching its pinnacle through the Muhammadan reality, it represents His being sent to all of mankind and the existence of the universe revolving around Him. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. But for us, each address has its duties, and only through turning the face to those divine directives can we begin to derive light from the countenance of God. Al-Khaliq, the Creator. For us, the first duty of the Adamic address is for the source of life, our families. That is what we must direct our vision to. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة. O believers, protect yourselves and your families from a fire, the fuel of which is people and stones. Surah Al-Tahrim, verse 6. It combines the Adamic and Muhammadan addresses. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And your Lord decreed that none be worshipped but Him, and that parents be treated beautifully. Surah Al-Isra, verse 23. It combines the Adamic and Abrahamic addresses. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. O mankind, be mindful of your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from the pair of them spread countless men and women far and wide. Be mindful of God, in whose name you demand your mutual rights. Beware of severing the ties of kinship. God is always watching over you. Surah An-Nisa, verse 1. This verse combines all the three addresses. The Adamic address commands us to honor the ties of blood. The Adamic address commands us to uphold Tawheed. The Muhammadan address commands us to guard the rights of others, with our families at the forefront. Is it any wonder why the enemies of humanity, the allies of Satan, target fitra, faith, and family? قال تعالى فلا تطع الكافرين وجاهدهم به جهادا كبيرا. أي بالقرآن. Surah Al-Furqan, verse 52. اللهم اجعل القرآن ربيع قلوبنا ونور أبصارنا وجلاء أحزاننا ونصرا مؤزرا لأمتنا. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله، والحمد لله رب العالمين.